The moment I realized something was off was the night I found a receipt in her coat pocket for a hotel I'd never been to and definitely never with her. I wasn't snooping. Let's be clear about that. I was just trying to be helpful. It had been raining all day, and she came in soaked, tossed her coat on the back of a chair, and went straight upstairs, saying something about a migraine. I picked up the coat to hang it in the laundry room, and when I reached into the pocket to check if it needed to be emptied before drying, there it was, a small, white rectangle, slightly crumpled, with the name of a boutique hotel downtown and a timestamp from the middle of a workday. My first instinct was confusion, not suspicion. I actually said out loud, "What the hell would she be doing at the Garnet Hotel on a Tuesday afternoon?" and stood there for a solid minute like the receipt was going to grow a mouth and explain itself. I walked up the stairs slowly, still holding the damn thing like it was evidence in a courtroom. The bedroom door was closed, and I could hear the dull buzz of the white noise machine she uses when she has headaches. I paused, debated knocking, debated just barging in and showing her the receipt, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the realization that I didn't want to hear the answer. Maybe it was how quiet the house had gotten, like it was waiting for me to make a move. Instead, I went back downstairs and slipped the receipt into the drawer where we keep spare batteries and manuals for appliances we never read. Then I made dinner like nothing happened, because I needed time to think, and I was hoping I was wrong. The next few days, I paid attention in a way I hadn't before. Not in a suspicious way, but with a new lens, like I was watching her with subtitles on, trying to read between the lines of everything she said. She wasn't doing anything obvious. She kissed me goodbye in the morning, called once or twice from work like she usually did, and texted me a picture of a coffee with a heart-shaped foam pattern like she always did when she went to that place near her office. But things felt delayed. Her eyes didn't match her words. Her smiles felt like they arrived a beat too late, like an actor hitting their mark but forgetting the line. She was still doing all the things, cooking, checking homework, watching shows with me in the evenings, but her presence was thinner, like she was always mentally a few blocks away. Then came Sunday. We were supposed to go to brunch with her sister and her new fiancé, and she told me that morning she wasn't feeling up to it. She claimed she was getting sick, which would have been believable if she hadn't spent the next 3 hours reorganizing the spice rack and scrubbing the stove like she was expecting a kitchen inspection. I offered to stay home and help, but she practically shoved me out the door. "You go, tell them I said hi, and make sure Rachel doesn't order that weird drink again. I just want to get this place in order," she said, kissing me on the cheek without even making eye contact. I left, but not because I believed her. I left because I needed to see what she was like when she didn't know I was watching. I didn't go to the restaurant. I parked 3 blocks away from our house and walked back like a creep, hood up, sticking to the shadows like I was in some low-budget detective show. It felt stupid and dramatic, but something in me needed to know. I crouched behind the neighbor's overgrown hedge like I was casing the place for a robbery, and I waited. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then I heard it, the sound of a car slowing down, then stopping. I peeked through the branches and saw a silver SUV pull up. I didn't recognize it, but the plates were local. The engine idled for a few seconds, then shut off. The driver didn't get out right away. He just sat there, like he was waiting for a signal. Eventually, my wife stepped out of the front door, looking nothing like the sick woman she'd described. She wasn't dressed like she was about to clean the fridge coils. She was wearing the kind of clothes you wear when you want someone to notice you, a soft, oversized sweater that fell just right over her jeans, hair pulled back but styled, the good earrings she only wears on anniversaries. She looked around once, casually, then walked to the passenger side of the SUV and got in. I stayed behind the hedge, frozen, watching as the car slowly drove off, turned the corner, and disappeared. I didn't follow. I just stayed there, crouched like an idiot, heart thudding in my chest, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. I didn't even go back inside right away. I walked around the block twice, then drove to the brunch spot just to make an appearance, told Rachel and her fiancé that Kate wasn't feeling well, and that I didn't want to stay long. I don't even remember what I ate, just that the whole time, I kept picturing her in that car with some guy, wondering what kind of conversation they were having, wondering how many times they'd done this before. When I finally got home, she was back. She was in the kitchen, chopping onions, her eyes red like she'd been crying. "Hey," she said. Without looking at me, I started dinner. "Hope you're hungry." I just nodded, took off my shoes, and went upstairs to change. I knew I wasn't going to eat a damn thing. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I just lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling while she breathed steadily, like her day had been perfectly normal. Her arm brushed against mine a few times, and each time I moved slightly, just enough to pull away without waking her. I kept hearing that damn car door closing in my head. The image of her slipping into that SUV, comfortable and casual, played on repeat. She didn't look scared. She didn't look like someone making a mistake. She looked like someone who'd done this before and didn't expect to get caught. The next morning, she woke up before me and slipped out of bed without saying anything. I stayed still, pretending to sleep, listening to her moving around downstairs. I heard the coffee maker start, heard the clink of a spoon in a mug. Then I heard her humming, just a little, under her breath. That was the part that stuck with me. She was humming, cheerful, like the night before hadn't meant anything to her. I got up 20 minutes later and took a long shower, not because I needed to, but because I couldn't look at her yet without giving something away. I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do. I couldn't accuse her, not yet. Not without knowing everything. If I was going to confront her, I needed it all laid out. No guessing, no assumptions, just facts she couldn't lie around. After breakfast, I said I needed to go into the office even though I usually work from home on Mondays. She didn't question it. She barely looked up from her phone. Okay, don't forget we need more toothpaste, she said. That was it. No kiss goodbye. No question about when I'd be back. No, have a good day. I walked out the door already knowing I wasn't going to the office. I had one destination in mind, and it was going to tell me everything I needed. The Garnet Hotel was about 20 minutes away. It wasn't in a bad area, but it wasn't exactly on the main strip either. It was the kind of place you booked if you didn't want to be recognized. The receptionist was a kid who looked like he was still in college, polite but barely paying attention. I gave him my best friendly but tired husband routine and said, "Hey, this might sound weird, but I think my wife left something here last week." She said she stayed here Tuesday? Name's Kate Hollister. Can you check if anyone turned anything in for her? He glanced at his screen, typed something, then shook his head. Sorry, nothing under that name. Maybe it's under another name. That's when I knew. She hadn't used her real name. She'd gone through the trouble of hiding it, even at the hotel. I smiled like I wasn't about to lose it, said thanks, and walked out. I stood on the sidewalk outside, watching people walk by, all of them going about their lives like none of this mattered. I had to get back in, get the information I needed, but I couldn't do it through the front desk. I walked around to the side, found the staff entrance, and waited. 10 minutes later, a guy in a maintenance uniform came out for a smoke. I approached him casually, keeping my voice low. Hey, man, I know this is going to sound nuts, but I think my wife's cheating on me, and I think she's been here. I just need to know if someone came here last Tuesday. She's 5'6", brunette, probably came with a tall guy, maybe in his 40s, clean cut. I'm not trying to make trouble. I just need to know if I'm crazy. The guy looked at me for a few seconds, then nodded like he'd seen this before. Yeah, he said. They were here? Not the first time, either. I've seen them a few times. Always in the middle of the day. She doesn't use her name. He checks in. They stay a couple hours, then leave. I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't need to. I thanked him, walked back to my car, and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, not moving. I had confirmation. Real, undeniable proof that my wife was cheating. Not a flirty text. Not a questionable photo. Not a vague story. An actual room. A real place. Witnesses. Multiple times. It was no longer a suspicion. It was a fact. I had to go home and look her in the eye knowing all of it. I had to eat dinner at the same table with the woman who was using my house as a halfway point between her real life and her secret one. But I wasn't going to say anything yet. Not today. That night, I told her I had a headache and wasn't hungry. She said, "That's okay. I'm not either," and went to bed early. No questions. No concern. Just like that. She closed the door, turned off the light, and left me alone in the living room with nothing but the hum of the fridge and the sound of the ceiling fan clicking every few seconds. I sat there for 2 hours, thinking about how long this had been going on. How many times had she lied straight to my face? How many excuses had I believed without a second thought? I wanted to walk upstairs and scream at her, throw the bedroom door open and demand to know everything. But I didn't. Because I needed more than a confession, I needed control. I needed to decide how this story was going to end. I waited until Friday. I didn't want to wait that long, but I needed to be ready, not just with proof, but with my head clear. I spent the next few days pretending everything was normal, which was probably the hardest thing I've done in my life. I watched her get dressed in the morning. I watched her make small talk about a show we were supposed to watch together. I listened to her say goodnight as if she wasn't sneaking away to be with someone else on her days off. Every word out of her mouth sounded like noise. I barely responded unless I had to, and when I did, it was just enough to keep her from noticing how much I hated the sound of her voice. By Thursday night, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to ask questions. I wasn't going to sit down and talk it through. I was going to confront her directly, without warning, and make her answer for every lie she fed me for weeks. I didn't want to hear another excuse or be told I was imagining things. I needed her to admit it to my face. She worked a half day on Fridays. That gave me the window I needed. I told her I had to go out of town for a work presentation and wouldn't be home until late. She didn't hesitate to agree. I watched her reaction closely when I told her, looking for any sign of guilt, any twitch, any nervous glance, but she just smiled, said good luck, and went back to her phone. That confirmed everything I needed to know. I left the house around 11 a.m., but I didn't go far. I parked 3 blocks away and waited. I already knew what car to look for. I had seen the silver SUV before, once at a gas station, another time when it passed me near the intersection by the school. I didn't know the guy's name, but I knew what he looked like now: tall, average build, clean-shaven, probably late 30s. I remembered his face from a security camera photo I had asked the hotel to print. He looked exactly how I expected the other man to look, unremarkable, but with the kind of bland confidence that only someone who thinks he's in control would carry. She left the house at 11:42. She didn't take her usual work bag. She wore jeans and a plain blouse, the kind of thing she never wore to her pharmacy shifts. She looked relaxed. She got into the passenger seat of his car like it was second nature. I followed at a distance, not too close, not too far. They didn't go to the hotel this time. They went to a house on the west side of town. I watched from my car as they pulled into the driveway, got out, and went inside without looking back. It wasn't quick. They didn't act like they were worried about being seen. It was the middle of the day, sunny and quiet, and they walked into that house like they'd done it 100 times before. I waited exactly 40 minutes before I got out of my car, walked up to the front door, and rang the bell. There was a pause, then footsteps. I could hear them fumbling inside, and I knew exactly what was going through her head in that moment. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her face turned white. Not shocked like she had no idea what was going on, no. This was the look of someone who had been caught and knew there was no way to lie their way out of it. The guy stood behind her, saying nothing, frozen in place like he wasn't sure if he should speak or run. "I want you to look me in the eye and tell me what this is," I said. "Don't lie. Don't pretend. Just say it." She didn't speak right away. She stepped out onto the porch, closed the door behind her, and crossed her arms like that was going to give her some kind of leverage. "It's not what you think," she started. I cut her off. "Don't say that. Don't insult me with that line. I've been watching. I know about the hotel. I know about this house. I know who he is. Just tell me how long." She swallowed hard. "A couple of months." "And how many times?" I asked, even though I already knew. She looked away. "Enough." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe she had said it like that, like this was a number game, like I was supposed to accept that answer and move on. "So this is what it is now? You cheat, and I'm supposed to deal with it like I forgot to buy milk on the way home." "It just happened," she said. "No, that's not true," I said. "You planned this. You changed your clothes, you lied about work, you covered your tracks. This didn't just happen. You made it happen." She didn't respond. I looked at the door behind her, knowing he was still standing there, probably listening, probably hoping I wouldn't punch through the drywall and drag him out by the collar. But I didn't care about him. He didn't matter. He wasn't the one who stood in front of our families and said she wanted to grow old with me. "I'm not going back in that house with you," I told her. "You can pack a bag and be gone by tomorrow. I'll let the kids know when the time is right." "Steve, please," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "Don't please me now," I said. "You had time for that. You made your choices. Live with them." Then I turned around and walked away. I didn't go home that night. I drove around for a while, stopped at a gas station just outside of town, bought a 6-pack and a cold sandwich, and sat in the parking lot with the engine running. I didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't want to answer questions. I didn't want my phone to light up with her name. I needed space. Not to calm down, because I wasn't angry in the way people expect you to be. I wasn't shouting or throwing things. I wasn't even shaking. I felt like someone had dropped a giant weight on my chest, and I was just waiting to see if it would crush me completely or if I'd eventually stand up and realize I could carry it. I stared out the windshield for what must have been 2 hours before I finally checked my phone. There were 6 missed calls from her, a few texts, nothing worth reading. I deleted them all without opening them and powered off the phone. I crashed at my friend Joel's place. He didn't ask too many questions, just opened the door when I knocked and gave me a nod like he already knew something was wrong. He handed me a pillow and a blanket and pointed toward the guest room. I didn't sleep much there either. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling in the dark, thinking about how long she'd been building that other life behind my back. It wasn't just about cheating. It was the months of pretending, the fake smiles, the hugs, the "how was your day?" that didn't mean anything. All those little things we used to share, inside jokes, lazy Sunday mornings, bickering over dinner plans, none of it was real anymore. Every memory I tried to replay in my head felt tainted, like I couldn't trust anything I thought we had. By morning, I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to be one of those guys who spends months wallowing, trying to figure out if the marriage could be salvaged. I had seen what that looked like in other people's lives, guys trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair, turning themselves into someone else in the process. That wasn't going to be me. I wasn't going to give her a second chance to lie again. So I went home around 10, expecting to find her gone or packing. Instead, she was in the kitchen like nothing had happened, drinking coffee and scrolling on her phone like it was a regular Saturday morning. That alone was enough to light something up inside me. "I told you to be out by today," I said, standing in the doorway. She looked up, surprised but not panicked. "I know. I just thought maybe we could talk before that." "There's nothing to talk about. You've already said everything that matters," I said, stepping further into the room. "You cheated. You lied. You kept it going. What's left to explain?" She put the mug down slowly, then stood up and crossed her arms. "I made a mistake, Steve. A huge one. I know that. I wasn't thinking clearly. I felt distant from us. Like I didn't matter anymore." I couldn't help but laugh. "You didn't matter? You were the center of everything. I worked my ass off to keep this house running, to give the kids stability, to make sure you had time for yourself. And you're saying you felt invisible? I'm not saying it was your fault. I'm saying I felt lost." And he paid attention to me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. "That's supposed to make this okay?" I asked, my voice rising. "You needed attention, so you snuck off in the middle of the day to screw some guy in a rental house?" "I didn't plan for it to happen like that," she said. "I didn't go looking for it." "You kept going back," I said flatly. "That's not a mistake. That's a decision." She dropped her arms and took a step toward me. "I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But we have a family. We've built a life. Can we at least talk about what happens next?" I shook my head. "What happens next is you pack your things and you leave. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll file next week. I'm not dragging this out." Her face tensed, and she blinked hard like she was trying not to cry. "What about the kids? They'll know eventually. I'm not going to lie to them, but I'm not going to tell them everything either. That's not for their benefit, that's for mine. Because unlike you, I still care about what kind of damage this does to them." "I never meant for this to hurt them," she said, her voice breaking. "But it will," I replied. "Because you didn't just cheat on me. You burned down everything we built. And you didn't even hesitate." She didn't say anything after that. She just stood there while I turned around and walked upstairs. I didn't want to see her pack. I didn't want to see her crying. I didn't want to hear whatever last-ditch story she had prepared. I just wanted her gone. It was the only thing I had control over anymore. She left that afternoon. No scene, no apology speech, no dramatics. She packed 2 suitcases, took her laptop bag, and walked out the front door without looking back. I watched her from the upstairs window. It wasn't satisfying or final. It just felt like watching someone remove a part of your life without asking first. The car pulled away, and the street went quiet again. I stayed standing there long after it disappeared from view, waiting for something inside me to shift. It didn't. The house felt bigger almost immediately. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was loaded. Every room I walked into had pieces of her still sitting there. The scarf she always forgot on the coat rack, the yoga mat leaning in the corner of the living room, her favorite coffee mug that I hadn't noticed until it sat untouched in the sink. I couldn't decide if I wanted to throw everything away or leave it as it was, like some kind of museum display of a version of my life that no longer existed. I didn't tell the kids right away. They were at my parents' for the weekend, and I needed time to figure out how to explain this without unloading everything. I didn't want to lie, but I also wasn't ready to say, "Your mom's been sneaking around with someone else and the whole marriage is over now." I called my brother instead, told him what happened in as few words as possible, and asked if I was being too cold. He said no, not even close, and that I should take care of myself before trying to manage anyone else's feelings. That helped a little. Not enough to sleep better, but enough to breathe without clenching my jaw. Sunday evening came fast. I picked up the kids around 5, took them out for dinner so I didn't have to pretend the kitchen wasn't a crime scene, and waited until we were home and they were settled before I sat them down. I didn't plan what I was going to say. I just started. Something happened between your mom and me, I said. She's not going to be living here anymore. Mia, our oldest, went quiet immediately. Luke frowned and looked around the room like he was waiting for the punchline. Did you guys have a fight? Luke asked. Not exactly, I replied. We've been having problems for a while. She made some choices that I can't accept. And because of that, we're going to get a divorce. Mia looked down at her hands and didn't speak. Luke asked the obvious question next. Is it because of someone else? I paused. He was only 12, but he already understood too much. I nodded slowly. Yes, it is. They didn't ask who. They didn't cry. They just sat there with the kind of stillness that hurts to watch in kids. I told them nothing about this was their fault, that I would still be here for them every day, and that their mother would still see them regularly, but things were going to be different. I tried to keep it simple, but there's no version of that conversation that doesn't sting. Afterward, I gave them space. Mia went to her room and closed the door. Luke sat on the couch and stared at the TV without turning it on. Later that night, I texted Kate. I told her they knew. She didn't reply. I didn't expect her to. She had spent so much time lying to my face, I couldn't even imagine what kind of excuses she might be telling herself now to make it all feel justified. I didn't want to know. I didn't want her version of the story anymore. The next day, she called and asked if we could talk. I told her to meet me at a park nearby, neutral ground, public space, no reason for anything to get ugly. When she arrived, she looked like she hadn't slept either. She sat on the bench next to me, leaving a gap between us. I just want to say I'm sorry, she began. I didn't answer. I just looked at her and waited. I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed something we built over a lot of years. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I'm not asking for that. But I want to make this as easy as possible for the kids. They already know, I said. She nodded. I figured. How did they take it? They're quiet. Hurt. Processing. Same as me. She swallowed and looked away. I didn't mean to lose everything. You didn't trip into this. You chose it, I said. You kept choosing it. I know. No, I don't think you do, I said. Because if you understood what you've done, you'd be sick right now. You'd be ashamed. And I don't see that in you. I see someone trying to clean up without admitting how bad the mess is. I'm not trying to escape responsibility, she said. But I'm trying to keep us from turning this into something worse. This already is worse, I said. You took the best parts of our life and used them as cover while you lied to my face. There's no coming back from that. We sat in silence for a while. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just looked tired. I'll cooperate with the divorce, she said quietly. You don't need to worry about me making this harder. Good, I said, because I don't have energy to fight someone who already broke everything. She stood up after a minute. Tell the kids I'll call them tonight. I'll let them know. Then she walked away again. The divorce moved faster than I expected. There was no resistance, no surprises, just paperwork, signatures, and scheduled meetings with lawyers that felt more like checking out of a bad hotel than ending a decade-long marriage. She agreed to joint custody without a fight, said she didn't want the house, just her car and whatever she needed to start over. I didn't ask where she was staying or how long she had been planning all of this. I didn't care anymore. There was no point in knowing. The version of her I had spent years loving no longer existed. The woman I married would never have done what she did, and the woman she became wasn't someone I could make sense of. Once everything was filed and done, the finality of it didn't hit like I thought it would. There was no dramatic moment. No collapse. Just silence. The house felt unfamiliar even though everything looked the same. The furniture hadn't moved. The dishes were still stacked the same way. But it was like the air had shifted, and I couldn't quite relax into it. I started sleeping on one side of the bed again, not because it made me feel better, but because I couldn't bring myself to lay where she used to. Her absence wasn't loud, it was just consistent, like a constant reminder that something had been removed and nothing had been put in its place yet. The kids adjusted in their own ways. Mia kept mostly to herself, became quieter at school, started spending more time with friends or at the library. Luke had more questions, asked me things out of nowhere, like whether I thought people could stop loving someone without noticing, or if people who hurt others always knew they were doing it. I tried to answer as honestly as I could without turning their mother into a villain. I didn't lie, but I chose my words carefully. They would figure things out over time. They didn't need to carry the weight of every ugly detail now. 3 weeks after the papers were finalized, she came by to drop off some things for the kids. She waited at the door like a stranger. When I opened it, she looked past me into the hallway but didn't step inside. "Here," she said, handing me a bag. "Their jackets, some school stuff, and a few books they asked for." "Thanks," I said, taking the bag. She lingered for a second, then spoke again. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I looked at her. She looked unsure for the first time in a long time. Not guilty, just unsettled. "All right," I said. "Out here." She nodded, stepped to the side, and we stood on the porch. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry again," she said. "I've been going to therapy, trying to understand what happened, why I let it happen." I didn't respond. I didn't want to make it easier for her. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "But I wanted you to know that I'm not walking away from this pretending it didn't matter. You were a good husband, a good father, and I failed you." I let that sit for a moment. "I know," I said. "I think I was unhappy for a long time and didn't want to admit it," she said. "I felt like I was living someone else's life and couldn't figure out how to stop without blowing everything up. And that's what I did." "Yeah," I said. "That's exactly what you did." She looked down at her hands. "I miss the way things used to be. I miss how simple we were in the beginning." "We weren't simple," I said. "We just didn't know what would come later." She nodded, her eyes starting to tear up. "If I could go back." "You can't," I interrupted. "And if you could, I don't think it would change who you turned into." That seemed to land. She blinked a few times and wiped her face. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "No," I said. "I don't hate you, but I don't know you anymore. And I'm done trying to figure out who you are now." She nodded again, then stepped back. "Tell the kids I'll see them Friday." "I will." She turned and walked to her car, this time without any hesitation. I closed the door and stood there for a moment before going back inside. The house was still quiet, but the weight of her was finally starting to fade. Not gone, not erased, but less sharp. I poured myself a coffee, sat at the table, and stared out the window for a while. There was nothing profound in that moment, just the realization that life was going to keep going, and I was still here, whether I wanted to be or not. In the weeks that followed, things started to feel manageable again. I went back to working regular hours, made plans with old friends, signed Luke up for a weekend basketball league, helped Mia apply for a summer science camp. I wasn't happy in the way people describe it, but I wasn't broken either. I was just living, and that was enough for now. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat on the couch and opened a message from Joel. He had sent a picture of us from 5 years ago, grilling in his backyard, laughing about something neither of us could now remember. I stared at it for a long time, not because I missed those days, but because I finally understood something. What happened wasn't about me being not enough. It wasn't about me failing as a husband or missing signs. It was about someone who stopped choosing me and thought I'd never notice. But I did, and I walked away with my dignity intact.